Welcome to Tanakh Talk. I'm your host, William Hall, broadcasting live from Kingsland, Texas, USA, with another episode of TNT, the Twisted New Testament, with Rabbi Stuart Federow from Houston, Texas. Tonight, our discussion is going to be, do the Jewish people believe in demons? Do they believe in hell? Of course, we already kind of know the answer, but the previous...
it's a different question.
The previous topic title basically is going to be the real root of the question is, do they believe in demons? Because it's very well known that the Jewish people don't believe in hell as Christianity presents hell. So maybe you could, first of all, kind of let us know what is it that what is taught with Judaism on what hell is, like, really, to start with. What is it? What's its purpose?
Okay. Well, I would say hell is not having access to good music. No. All right.
That's a good one.
Okay. William, I'm always very careful to use words very carefully. Okay. Words have very specific meanings. We've talked about this repeatedly through the years, but words have specific meaning, and we need to be careful when we use words because it can mislead people.
Right.
So there are those rabbis, Jews, whatever, who will say, we believe in hell, and then they'll give it a definition or description that isn't what hell is. Mm-hmm. And all people will hear is, oh, well, I heard the rabbi, he said we believe in hell. And we don't believe in hell by the definition of the word hell. So when they're calling the afterlife, when they're calling a part of the afterlife hell, it's really a misnomer because of how people hear the word. An average person hears the word hell, they think of the normal definition of the word hell, the place that the soul goes to in the next life to be eternally punished for sins, that unrepented sins committed in this life. And it's not eternal, and that's the big difference, and that's what makes all the difference. So we believe in the afterlife. We believe in the next, in a punishment in the next life for the sins. For the unrepented sins committed in this life. There's a punishment in the next life for the unrepented sins committed in this life. The punishment fits the sin, whatever that means. But when the punishment is over, okay, the soul goes back to God who gave it, as it says in Ecclesiastes 12:7, I believe. So when you'll hear people say, learned people say, that we believe in hell, but we really don't, because hell is eternal and Jews don't believe that punishment is eternal. By and large, the incredibly vast majority. And the exceptionally few kinds of people who would be punished eternal have committed extremely heinous, horrible things in their lives. And an alternative method of dealing with them is they have a punishment, and then there's annihilation of the soul. And so they cease to exist at all. Presumably because their soul from God is so horribly tainted by their evil nature or their evil deed or deeds that the soul is unredeemable or something. But that's exceptionally rare in Jewish thought. Okay, so how does that relate to demons and demonology and everything? And the question, as you've asked it, is, do Jews believe in demons? Okay, there's a real quick answer. No and yes. Okay, we're done.
That's funny.
Okay. You have rabbis in history who believed in demons. You have rabbis in history who did not believe in demons. And the rabbis who believed in them would never say that the rabbis who didn't believe in them weren't real Jews, weren't knowledgeable, weren't whatever. Okay? They're not going to say that Ibn Ezra was a heretic because he just flatly refused to believe in demons. Okay, they're not going to say, well, Maimonides wasn't really a good rabbi or, a real Jew, or he was ignorant. because he kind of gave the concepts of demons a kind of, explained it away. So, let's see. If there's an evil spirit, then you can put a light out even on Shabbat to scare it away or whatever. But he understood that evil spirit in the sense that we would understand depression. And therefore putting a light, people live in the dark, they can get very depressed. There's a winter ailment where you're more likely to get depressed in the winter because there's less light. And so Maimonides, spin on the idea of demons is kind of like to give it, he was a very rationally thinking man. And so he's going to, give it a spin. Okay. Other rabbis might, there might be a reference in the Talmud to, somebody who was a demon, and they would say that, well, they called him a devil because he had a devil-may-care character. You see how they're spinning it, the idea? Okay. But, okay. And I've told you this, I've said this repeatedly, I don't have a mystical mind. My brain is far too rational, not necessarily a good thing, to understand Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. But Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, has its own demonology. Demonology means a whole structure of demons and their names and what they do and how they work and all this stuff. And I don't get it, okay? But you have to understand that if you're going to think of a demon as a little, short little animal with horns that's red and a pitchfork, okay, you're not going to get that even in the Kabbalistic kind, okay? You're going to get a negative spiritual force that God put in the world because God has his own purposes and needs them to do things or something like that. On the other hand, let me tell you one of the most interesting assignments I had when I was an undergrad, and we had to translate, and you better brace yourself. See, that's another thing. People have this idea of Judaism as it's very rational, it's very reasonable, it's very reasoned, okay? It makes so much sense. And they kind of forget that along with the rational, there's also the folk religion, okay? There's also the mystical side of Judaism, the what you might call the superstitious side of Judaism. So there is a thing in, I don't know, I can't remember when, Middle Ages Judaism, which are called Jewish magical bowls, like a bowl of soup. Mm-hmm. This is a Jewish magical bowl. And one of the assignments we had, and I had one in my hand, was to translate the Hebrew of a Jewish magical bowl. What does this take me back? What happened is this. You had a bowl. I don't know, whatever. No, that's not going to work. You had a bowl, okay, and on the inside of the bowl, we're talking something like this. We're not talking small, okay? But on the inside of the bowl would be a handwritten incantation against evil spirits, demons, whatever you want to call them, that would start in the middle and circulate like this until it came to the outer ridge of the bowl. And then the person would recite this and go to the front door. They'd go to the front door, they would recite this, and then turn it upside down on the like the front porch step. Okay. And that would trap evil spirits and it would stay right where it was on the front porch. Now, that sounds strange to our ears because we think, oh, well, Judaism is rational and reasonable. And, this is so, I don't know, folksy. It's beneath the Jewish people, but it's not. It's very much a part of the folk religion of Judaism. We're talking Middle Ages, probably, I don't know. I don't remember well enough, Eastern Europe. But at any rate, the point is that, they were incantations against evil spirits. Dear God, save us from, evil spirits kind of thing. Or I'll tell you another one. And that is, I'm sure you've seen the red thread. You know what I'm talking about?
I'm not sure.
Okay. A lot of times, even Madonna they'll wear a red thread around their wrist.
Okay.
Okay. Another thing to keep evil spirits away, and this goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, and an idea that if a person, I'm not sure where it goes back to, but there are interesting parallels where if a person was sick, okay, I mean, like deathly sick, the idea would be kind of that if you're touching the Torah, you would outsmart or whatever death. Okay, you wouldn't die because you were touching the Torah. And this led to people, and I know how this sounds, okay, but they would take a red thread, and remember, this is in a period where, this is in a community where you always had to live near enough to a synagogue to be able to walk to services, obviously. And they would tie a red thread around the person who was ill and then have the thread go all the way to the synagogue, all the way to the sanctuary, all the way and attached to the Torah scroll. And over time, this changed to where maybe it was wrapped around a Torah scroll and then unwound and then wrapped around a person's wrist. So there's some sort of folk religion of being attached, so to speak, to the Torah. So the person would either get better or not die or what have you. And you have, at least that's the etymological story I was told about the red thread. The point is that, you'll have people who will wear a red thread as part of their expression of the more mystical side of Judaism and as a good luck thing. And just so you'll know, yeah, you better bet that my kids, when they were in the baby in a crib, the crib had a red thread tied to it.
Huh.
Even mine.
Right.
I'm talking about my children in my house.
Gotcha. When
they were babies in the crib had a red thread.
How about that?
And on my car, hanging down from my mirror, is a red thread that you don't necessarily see when you look at it, but it's there, let me tell you. So call it superstition, call it what you want, but that's my response to Jews. Do Jews believe in demons? Yes and no. Some do, some don't. Famous rabbis in history rejected it outright. Famous rabbis in history had developed a whole demonology and names of demons and who was, the power of this and who to avoid for that and, this kind of thing. Okay.
Okay.
Quick answer.
Yep.
Only partially accurate, but this is what I remember from what I read, from what I've seen, learned from a long time ago, like doing Jewish magical bowls. It influences us. There's all sorts of, things that we do today that are influenced by this mystical view of the world and that people don't even necessarily realize come from this mystical view of the world found in parts of Judaism. So quick answer, partially correct at least.
Gotcha. Okay.
needs more research from
Sure.
and discussion from people who know it more intimately. Like I said, I have a rational mind, so I may do some things like red thread on my baby's crib, but
Right.
by and large,
What about the whole idea of hell? What's the purpose of it? What is it?
well, the purpose in Judaism of hell is the punishment of sins, unrepented sins committed in this life that are recompensed in the next life.
And is this something that's eternal? Is it a lake of fire? Is it just a separation from Hashem?
Okay.
What is it?
It's not just a separation from God, because there are people who are atheists. They're separated from God. Would you say that they're in hell? Okay, no. They could be having wonderful, fabulous lives.
Right.
And the fact that they're, separated from God because they don't believe in God doesn't put them in hell. Hell is a response to sin. A person is punished for the unrepented sins that they committed in this life. They're punished for it in the next life.
So
it's like picture an object we will call the soul that comes directly from God. And we misuse or abuse the wonderful life we've been given by virtue of that soul. Okay, and it taints the soul. And so the afterlife is a kind of initially a kind of polishing that object to get rid of the what's it called? The rust. That's not what I mean, but you get the general idea.
So it's not it's not the place where a person would go eternally.
That's the point. That's why when people say, "Oh, Judaism believes in hell," it's not really accurate, because hell means eternal torture in the next life for sins committed in this life.
According to Christianity, right?
Which is mainly Christianity. It's also found in Islam that way.
Right.
And a couple of points need to be made. I've said this before, but what kind of God condemns a soul to an eternity of torture? Eternity is a really long time. Mm-hmm. What would God get out of having a soul tortured for eternity? Why? Because we ate pig? Mm-hmm. Okay, because we transgressed the Shabbat? Staying away from pig is for our benefit. Observing the Shabbat is for our benefit. Okay, people forget that there are effects of observance of Jewish law and tradition, of obeying God's commandments. If a mezuzah on the doorpost, if you touch it, okay, it's a reminder to keep God's commandments. If you don't get the reminder. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make evil.
Right.
Okay. Just because you ignore the mezuzah on the doorpost, but if you touch it, you're reminding yourself God is in control and has commandments, and we're supposed to obey those commandments. 613 in the Torah. So, a God who is merciful, a God who is compassionate, a God who is forgiving doesn't condemn a soul for an eternity of torture. That's just not our idea of God. That is a God, small G-O-D. That's a God of cruelty. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing you have to remember. The dust returns to dust. The spirit goes back to God who gave it. If the physical, tangible, touchable, material stuff of which we are made disintegrates in the earth, and the spiritual part of us, the soul, goes back to God who gave it, how can a lake of fire hurt something that's spiritual? Because fire, by definition, only consumes material. What kind of sense does it make about having a lake of fire if the only thing that survives life is the spiritual, which has no physiological substance? It's not material. It's not, dust. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So the kind of, look, Judaism is about this life and how to live it. Read the Bible. Pick up the Tanakh and actually read it. Okay, it's a how-to book to get along with in this world. How to have a relationship with God and a relationship with God's creatures that includes the creatures called human beings, fellow human beings. Okay, it's not nowhere in the Bible does it say to get to heaven do X, Y, Z.
Right.
Okay, so we don't spend time trying to well, there are people who have described the afterlife and hell and all this stuff. Not hell, sorry. See how easy it is to get into that?
Yep.
Who will describe the afterlife, but it's conjecture. Okay, nobody's been there. And the purpose of these descriptions may be to, I don't know, scare people to stay moral and ethical, to follow the dictates of God. Okay, but nobody's come back from the afterlife to tell them exactly how and when and how it works.
Right.
Okay, so it's conjecture.
Okay.
All right.
Yep. All right, so we will go ahead at this point and open up the phone lines because I don't think I have any more questions myself. So let me log in. Oops, that's the wrong one. Wrong keyboard.
Let's see.
Check the YouTube chat if you want to.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
I guess it would help if I did this.
All right.
I believe demons exist. The Talmud explicitly states names of people who actually saw them. Okay.
There you go. Phone lines open, 855-952-4253. Please call in with your questions or comments. Actually, questions. So the whole
everybody's given their idea of what they think, the afterlife is like, but even they are speaking in conjecture. Thank you, Deanna, for your birthday wishes.
Yes,
I am 67 today.
Very cool.
Let's see. Devin, thank you. Daniel 12:2. Daniel 12:2. I think I know what that means. I think that I know that reference, but let me make sure.
Okay, I'll pull it up too.
Thank you, Mina. Let's see. Come on. There we go.
This tab used to open up the Bible.
Daniel 12 and
it does. Okay, good.
2. I knew it. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Okay. First of all, every verse of the Bible we are permitted to interpret. Okay. When it says some to shame and everlasting contempt, okay, how do you think the relatives of descendants of an Adolf Hitler are going to feel? They change their name and they don't want to be associated with Adolf Hitler because they're still, so many years after he's been dead, ashamed of that connection. Okay. If we want to label somebody to be the epitome of evil, we liken them to a Hitler. In other words, because we hold Hitler in everlasting contempt. It doesn't mean they're in hell. It means how the world that continues after them feels about them. That's just as much a legitimate interpretation of Daniel 12:2 as saying that this is some sort of reference to some sort of Christian hell. Okay, let's see. That was for Dustin Stachowski.
Okay.
Stachowski. Not sure how to pronounce it.
And we've got a caller.
Okay, good.
Okay, caller, please tell us your name. Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Holly from South Dakota.
Hi, Holly. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Yes, and Rabbi, you just sent me your book, and so thank you so much, and happy birthday.
Well, thank you. I hope the book is helpful.
Yes, so, I've been reading it. Yeah, I just saw a Facebook question that was like, what's the difference between the devil and Satan? And I wanted to write, go read his book. You say everything about that. But anyway, so my question... So my question, I don't know how to quite articulate it, but so I actually heard another rabbi talking about the Holocaust in a way that kind of surprised me, not necessarily like insinuating that the Holocaust was punishment for Jews, not following the ways of the Torah.
Which would be classically biblical.
Okay. So what would, I was kind of stunned by that statement, but then when you also brought up, and others have brought up the idea too, that maybe, in regards to supposed reincarnation or something like that, in the next life, you could be punished for the sins in the life before. I mean, could you equate something like that to something as horrible as, the Holocaust or genocide? I mean,
wait, I'm not clear on your question. Equating the genocide and the evil of Holocaust with what?
With the idea that the people who were victims were somehow being punished with something that they had done in a past life.
Okay, let me say this. If you take a look at the Bible, why did the northern kingdom fall to the Assyrians? Why did the southern kingdom fall to Babylonia? And the answer is because the Jews were sinning. And therefore, the actions of the world against the Jewish community is viewed biblically, it's in the Bible, as a punishment for their sins. You get some of that with the second destruction, although most people are more familiar with the idea of the Jews themselves were engaging in baseless hatred of each other, couldn't get along, no longer respected each other. And again, it becomes a punishment for this. That is not my theology. That to me is blaming the victim. Okay. From my perspective, the Holocaust happened for a very, very, well, not just one, but for very specific reasons. Okay. First and foremost, and when I go to children's classes and teach them about the Holocaust, I ask them the same thing. I ask them, who is it that you tease? If you take a look at who gets teased, it's the person who's too tall or too short, too fat or too thin, too smart or too dumb, okay, too coordinated or not coordinated enough, okay? It's the people who stick out and look different. Well, Judaism makes us different. We are a nation set apart. We are a people holy to God. And holy, what does holy mean? Separate, special, different, distinct. And what makes us that way is the commandments and mitzvot that come to us directly from God. Okay. Another reason, which is for me personally, the main reason why the Holocaust happens is because God every single day is screaming to the world, thou shalt not murder. Don't stand idle while your neighbor bleeds. Justice shall you pursue. Numerous others, rebuke your neighbor for the evil he commits because you'll fall into his sin. Okay? In other words, God is screaming at us through the Bible to be moral and ethical, and the people who perpetrate Holocausts are the ones who set a deaf ear to God. I can't blame God when people disobey God. Okay, that would be, who Carrie Nation was? You remember hearing about Carrie Nation?
Not me.
Prohibitionist.
No.
In the turn of the century. Okay, walk into bars with her female cohorts and smash the bottle and smash the barrels of beer and walk out. Okay, that would be like blaming Carrie Nation for alcoholism, when she's the one fighting the most against it, just as God fights against immorality the most, and blaming the people who will not listen to God when God says, thou shalt not murder. And there are people I know, unfortunately, who will say, not that they ever lived through it, by the way, not that they even know anybody who lived through it, but they'll say, well, I just can't believe in the Holocaust. I'm sorry, start over. I just can't believe in God after the Holocaust. So who are you stuck with believing? Human beings who perpetrated the Holocaust? To me, that's a moral moron. Okay, turning their faith into human beings because the human beings disobeyed God when God is the one who said, don't do this. Look, if a religion says this is what you're supposed to go do, okay, if a religion says do this and what they tell you is a bad thing, blame the religion. But when the religion says don't hate your neighbor, okay? Don't bear a grudge. Don't stand idle while your neighbor bleeds. Justice shall you pursue, et cetera, et cetera. You can't blame God when God is the one who says don't do that. You blame the people who disobey God, who won't listen to God.
Right.
So
Right.
I simply cannot agree in any way, shape, or form with saying that the Holocaust happened because Jews were sinning. So the Nazis, okay, would knock on your door and say, now, is there anybody in here who doesn't keep the Sabbath? Because, we're Nazis and we really care about the Sabbath, so we're going to punish only the ones. It didn't work that way. Okay, if you were a Jew, and if you had one grandparent who was a Jew, because they saw it as a race, and it's derived directly out of the Spanish Inquisition. Okay, this the first time in world history the Jews were considered to be a race, that there was something called Jewish blood, happened at the forced conversions of the Jews by Catholicism, the only Christianity that existed, in the late 1300s. And when they started reverting back to their Judaism because they didn't want to leave God, okay, that's when the Inquisition was founded to keep them in line. Okay, and by the way, that's another whole reason why the Holocaust existed. Okay, I tell the story again every time somebody asks me, why do you think the Holocaust happened? And I'll say, well, let me give you an example. There's a men's organization that's put themselves around intermediate school, a middle school, what I used to call a junior high school. It dates me. About once every 3 or 4 years. And to every single student who will accept one, they hand them a book. And in that book, it says about the Jews that we are murderers and liars and descendants of Satan. And in the same way that Satan, our father, lied and was a murderer, so are we. And then I ask the audience, what book am I talking about? And they'll say, oh, Mein Kampf or whatever. No, the book they were handing out is called the New Testament. And that quotation comes from the Gospel of John chapter 8, verse 44 and following, where Jesus says that the Jews are murderers and liars and children of Satan, which is the real reason why you have, sculpture of Moses with horns. Because if the Jews are descendants of Satan and Satan is portrayed as having horns, then the Jews must have horns. And growing up in Springfield, Missouri, I had people looking, at my top of my scalp and asking me, where are your horns? And they weren't kidding. Okay. So part of the Holocaust isn't because of punishment of people. It's because, the whole history of anti-Semitism preceded it.
Right, and I totally agree with you on that, and that's why I guess, and I've seen a couple because I've been exploring and watching lots of videos on YouTube of different rabbis. But often what I hear in some of the videos is Hashem runs the world. Hashem runs the world.
And I understand that, but there's also the concept of Ecclesiastes 9:11. The race is not always won by the fastest. The battle is not always won by the strongest. Men of understanding are not always the wealthiest. Men of skills are not always the most renowned. But time and chance happens to us all. Time and chance happens to us all. Allowing us, giving the opportunity to say it wasn't God who did this to us, which, by the way, enables us to go to God and say, God, I need your help. If I punch you in the face, you're not going to come to me because you got punched if I'm the one who did it to you. So by saying time and chance happens, it wasn't God who did this to me, I can then be more apt to go to God and say, God, I need help to get through this. Okay, so there are those who will say God runs everything. Again, that's not my personal theology. Okay, I think that, there's a saying, one more thing. There's a saying that I have, which is you better choose your theology very carefully because it will paint you into a corner you will never get out of. And by saying God is in control of everything, then you're going to have to come up with all sorts of excuses or reasons why God killed 6.7 million Jews in the Holocaust, not to mention the everybody else that the Nazis went after.
Right. And in this case, the rabbi was like insinuating that it was because the Jews were straying away from God. And I was kind of very shocked to hear that.
I'm sorry, but I'm going to reject anything that blames the victim, especially in something so horrible, horrible, horrible as the Holocaust. And there are those who will say, well, Germany was the place where the Reform and the non-Orthodox movements began, so therefore that's where the Nazis, again, not my theology, blame the victim. And I think there are plenty of other more reasonable explanations than to have to say that.
Well, thank you for clarifying that. So there is a debate then that goes on within kind of the different sects.
Oh yeah, it goes. It's Job all over again. It's Job. Remember the most wonderful thing about Job is the very, 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 very end of Job that people neglect. Okay, this is my take on Job, and right or wrong, who knows? Okay, but what happens at the very, 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 very end of Job? Okay, in the beginning of the end, God says to Job, "Can you lay out the Pleiades?" Okay, where were you when I hung the Big Dipper in the sky? Okay, God throws the power and the glory at Job to make him humble. He says, "You're not going to understand my explanation." He says, "You can't comprehend the universe. You don't know why things happen, and I can't explain it to you." And if you know the book and the movie, God's answer to Job is 42. Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe? Hello?
I'm here. I don't recognize that reference.
Okay, you don't okay.
Sorry.
Great movie, great book called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Universe, where they make this computer that's literally the size of a planet, okay, and they ask the computer, what's the meaning of life? And thousands and thousands of years go by where the computer is churning and churning and churning and churning, and finally it comes up with the answer, and everybody is at bated breath. What's the computer going to tell us the meaning of life is? And the computer says 42. And he says, that's just as much an answer that you're going to be able to comprehend as if I gave you the real answer. You don't have the capacity to understand. Right. It would be like an ant trying to understand nuclear physics.
Right.
Okay, I may as well just tell you 42 is the answer, because you're not going to understand the real answer. You'll understand it about as well as you understand the answer of 42. And God says to Job the same thing. However, most people stop reading there, and it's not where the end of the movie is. I'm sorry, start over. It's not where the end of the story is. Because if you continue reading to the very end, God says to his friends, okay, only because Job has prayed for me to forgive you am I forgiving you. You all spoke wrongly, only Job spoke correctly. What does that mean? It means you're never going to understand the answer, but you are right to ask the question. You are right to demand justice even from God, and to demand an explanation when there is no justice. Even though you're not going to get an answer you can comprehend, you are right to ask the question. Wow, that to me is amazing, freeing. Okay, we're right to demand justice even from God. Look, Job was in good company. Abraham, shall not the God of justice do justly? Okay, or Job, Abraham, and who am I missing? I'm missing somebody. Job, Abraham. Well, actually, if you want to know the truth, Jacob did the same thing. God says to Jacob, okay, I will be with you through all your travels until you come back to this place, meaning the promised land, because, Jacob ran for his life. Okay, and what's Jacob's immediate response? sorry, God, that's not the way it works. Instead of God's way of saying it,
Right.
which is, I will be with you until you come back here, Jacob's response is, no, you bring me back here and then you'll be my God. Correcting God, kind of outsmarting God, so to speak, kivyachol, as if that's possible. Okay, the I can't think of it. Abraham. Well, at any rate, okay. Old man memory, okay, but they're in good company by questioning God. You're not going to understand the answer, but you're right to keep asking the question, to demand justice wherever you go, even from God. And I think that is...
Yeah, and it kind of, I guess, to me, it makes it...
Moses.
It shows
Thank you,
kind
Andrea.
of
Moses did too.
Oh, Moses. Yes, he did. Yeah. But yeah, but I think to me, it shows like the humility of God in a way.
Absolutely.
You can question me. You have the right to question me. Like not
Absolutely.
a God that says, "How dare you question me?" But yeah. So I like that. Well, thank you for answering that complicated question.
Well, like I always say,
So
I'll help in any way I can. I'll help confuse you in any way I can.
Well, thank you, and happy birthday. And thank you, William.
You're
you guys
welcome.
have a good evening.
Thank you. You as well.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, phone line's back open. Yeah, wow. It is kind of complicated,
It's very complicated. Of course it is. Job was not meant to be, a simplistic answer. It's very, very, pardon the expression, it's very, very deep.
Right.
But I love the answer of, you're not going to understand the answer, but you are right to ask the question. Only my servant Job spoke rightly. God had to throw the power and the glory at Job, but Job was still right to ask the question, because that's all he did. He said, I don't care that I suffer, just tell me why.
Yeah.
They talk about there's a saying, I think, of the patience of a Job. Job was not patient. He's saying to God, I want to know the answer. Tell me the answer now. Tell me, I don't care that I suffer. Just tell me why. Give me the reason. What's his name?
Right.
I can't think of the name of the philosopher, Holocaust survivor. People can survive anything if they have a why.
Yeah, if they've got a reason.
Yeah, they can survive they can find the how if they know the why, or something like that. I can't remember exactly how he said it.
Okay, comment by Maximo on YouTube. It said, why do demons go in the name of Jesus? I have witnessed a pastor call out a demon who spoke and said, for you will now come out, for Jesus we will, whatever. This was not staged, he says.
And my answer, he's not going to like.
Okay.
Because it's all in the mind of the person who has the demon.
I totally agree. Fully.
And the person who believes in Jesus, is going to stop his psychiatric episode, because now he can give it up to Jesus.
Mm-hmm. And it's the name that they were trained to be afraid of or to be reverent of. So it's a natural response.
And so it's a psychological response.
Yeah.
When they hear in the name of Jesus, that they stop their behavior. Look, I'm not saying their behavior isn't erratic and, messed up, but that doesn't mean it's a demon either. As a matter of fact, I just said it. I can't remember.
Jennifer Wright asked...
half an hour ago, we were talking about rabbis who would rationalize and give an intellectual, a reasoned spin on these kind of demons in Jewish tradition, which are found in Jewish tradition, but they're giving it a spin where it's, melancholy or depression as opposed to a demon. Well, guess what? Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, Jennifer Wright asked, I'm going to word it my way. What's the difference between a devil and the devil? I'm just going to put it that way. That's a simple way of...
I know there's a difference between the Satan and the devil, but in Christianity they use the two words devil and Satan interchangeably.
Right.
Okay, so a devil would be more like a little bitty demon, I guess, in the demonology. Okay, but the devil would be the Satan in Christian thought. Okay,
So when
I assume that's the context in which she's talking about.
yeah, she said basically in Job, says what's always confused her is in Job and the debate of a devil versus the devil. So somewhere in Job has got that line. But
Okay, well,
with
I'm not.
Judaism, with Judaism, what is the view? I guess you kind of already just said it actually. The difference between like just Satan and the devil, or like Hasatan, the Satan, right? Let's take this call. We'll come back to my question.
Go ahead. Remember it.
All right, caller, welcome to the show. Please tell us your name, where you're calling from.
Hello.
Hello, you're live on the air.
Hi. I am in the interview now.
Yes, you're live on the air. You're more than welcome to give us your question now. Why don't you turn your computer down, because it's feeding back into the mic.
Okay. I don't have a question. Just I want to tell you my experience, because I was in Christianity in many years.
Okay.
And I became mental sick from the teaching what they have.
Okay.
So they talking about demons and that kind of things, and it's all starting with a false teacher. It's called Derek Prince. I don't know if you heard about that, but they made even the Christianity became more sick as it was. So I don't know how to explain this, but the things what they bring with this demon topic into the Christianity is made the people seriously sick. Like this is crazy.
I know Derek Prince. I've seen his shows a handful of times, unfortunately. And then you've got others like Benny Hinn, right? Who does all this these fantastic claims that a lot of them have actually been like debunked, and there were some people went in as private investigators. That's not the right term, but I guess you could say undercover, and they exposed that most of the stuff was all just made up stuff that they were doing for television, unfortunately.
Now the joke is that so these kind of churches is basically idolatry, but like false messiah. The pastors now they are replacing the statues with pastors, and they call them anointed.
Oh wow!
I don't know if you know that. I guess
I didn't know that's what they're doing. That's pretty wild.
So this yeah. So this is totally abnormal when thousands of people following one person, and they following the teaching of that person.
Right.
They consider that guy like Moses, actually.
Right.
They are the modern Moses.
Right.
And so they are false messiahs, and these people talking about demons, and the people became sick, mental sick. I was 70 years old when I get into this kind of charismatic movement, Christian charismatic movement. And I lost more than 10 years from my life. Actually, the best, my young age, I lost. Because they teaching about demons, they put you in a prison, like if you do something which is no good, and the devil gonna get right for your life, and you are like an open house for the demons. And basically this demon teaching is about to make you fear.
Right.
So they fear you up with the fear, and they call this the fear of the God. So everything is upside down, and everything is messed up. Is is a complete mess what they're doing.
Certainly.
They're using this demon teaching and these kind of things, and the people are in idolatry. They don't even know about that.
Right.
They're following one false Moses and false Messiah.
Certainly.
And they dealing with demons instead praying to Hashem, and it's terrible. Even the Christianity is turning worse. They turning with this kind of teachings. They turning the Christianity a real occultism. I can say that.
Interesting.
So
well,
I lost my young age. I lost 10 years from my life in this kind of charismatic church.
Well, I'm glad you made it out. That's good. I know you're. You said you're you're past your 70s now, so it's Baruch Hashem that you made yourself out.
Thank God.
I mean. Well, thanks for calling in, man.
Yeah, my grandfather is a Holocaust survivor.
Oh wow.
A couple of months ago, I find Manis Friedman on the YouTube.
Yes.
And since that moment, I start listening the rabbis on the YouTube and your program and many other things.
Wonderful.
And it's helped me a lot to clean up the mess that this kind of charismatic Christian movements, which is a part of the Messianic movements. I just let you know.
Yeah,
the one part of that one. So this is energizing the Messianic movement.
Right.
So it's like a twins. It's a part of that. So the trouble is big, seriously, and that's why I am very very grateful for Tovia Singer.
Well,
and
thanks
Manis
for
Friedman and
thank you for letting me know. That's really good to see that that these teachings are getting out there and it's actually making an impact on people's lives.
Oh, it definitely is, William.
Absolutely. Well, caller, thank you so much for calling in. We'll go to free the phone lines up now for another caller. We may have time for one more. So
and while you're doing that, I'm going to answer a question by Muhammad Ali on the chat on YouTube.
Okay.
He asks, can the rabbi speak about Solomon controlling demons to build the temple? Okay. Muhammad, do you know what pseudepigrapha is? Pseudepigrapha are literature that was written between the Testaments in the period of time between the end of the Hebrew Scriptures and the beginning of the Christian's New Testament. And pseudepigrapha is like, an example would be, if I write a story, nobody's going to read it or believe in it or care about it if it was written by a Stuart Federow. But if I say, oh, this was actually written by George Washington, okay, this was actually written by Moses, this was actually written by I don't know, Adam and Eve, okay, then they'll pay attention to it. And and that pseudepigrapha is false, like authorship. And there's a text called the Testimony or something like that of Solomon, which is pseudepigrapha. Solomon never wrote this. Okay, Solomon had been dead for 1,000 years before this even showed up anywhere. Nowhere in the Tanakh does it ever say that Solomon controlled demons and used them to build his temple. Unless it's found in the Quran, but I'm not responsible for what's in the Quran. But it's not in the Bible, and you might possibly find it in much later Jewish literature, but that's only because of the influence of folk religion and demonology and this kind of stuff. But it's not in the Bible. It doesn't say that. And Solomon didn't control demons to build the temple. They were built by people, with their own hands. Okay, take the call.
All right, caller, you are on the air. Tell us your name, where you're calling from, please.
It's Shmuel, and I'm actually calling from Miami instead of New York.
Oh, hey, welcome, Shmuel.
Heading south for the winter.
Yes, sir. What is your question for tonight, Saya?
Unfortunately, it's not. My wife's mother passed away in the funeral today.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Baruch Dayan Emet.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Very good.
The reason I was calling you is I just wanted to ask you if I noticed in the chat that people were kind of comparing the Jewish viewpoint on demons with the Christian viewpoint of demons, and I think that's a very incorrect
I agree.
outlook. As right, the demons are very, very different when it comes to the Jewish viewpoint. What do you think about it? Oh, you agree, you say?
Absolutely. They think of demons as little bitty, like baby humans with wings and a pitchfork and devil horns and that's not Judaism.
Right. Judaism has a very, very, very different take on demons. As a matter of fact, there's actually there's a demon referred to in the Talmud who was by the name of Yosef Sheda. And
right.
Actually,
I actually spoke about that.
Your friend.
Okay.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. I must have missed that part.
I didn't remember the name Joseph, but the way that I think it was Maimonides or Ibn Ezra. No, I can't remember. Old man memory. But the point is that it's given a spin, a rationalization where it's not actually saying, "Oh, that's a real demon," by one rabbi. Okay. In other words, how people treat that can vary from rabbi to rabbi.
Right. Very good. Well, speaking of rabbi, we are.
Was that your where you were heading to?
I disconnected on him because I was opening up the phone lines for another caller. But I didn't realize we're actually out of time. So anyway, all right, Rabbi. Well, if you don't have anything else, I'm going.
It was the Meiri.
Oh,
okay. Right. Menachem Meiri, who Joseph the Devil was in the sense that he was a devil-may-care character. He gives it a spin. He's not going to understand the Talmudic reference. He demythologizes it. Anyway, so many rabbis took it literally. Many rabbis would take it symbolically. Many rabbis would, use a rationalization or a spin. And other rabbis would take it as absolute truth. There are demons in the world. So, and again, I hope you're still listening. As I did say, I don't have my mind is too rational, and Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, I don't get. That's just me, my own weakness. So
there you go. All right, Rabbi. Well, thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys at Hashem willing, same time, same place next week. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, guys.
Yep. Doot, 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 doot.
תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה והכמיהה. אני אתה אתם תמיד כולם ביחד, חשוב מכל חשוב והכרחי להיות ביחד. איפוק זו העוצמה, ויתור זו הגדולה, השאיפה והכמיהה. חושבים דוברים לובשים בכל האופנים, זה טבעם של אנשים שונים. נזכור בסוף כולנו שותפים.